Thank you again to everyone who's joining us tonight for this Princeton University Bridge Year Program webinar. My name is Scott Leroy. I'm the Associate Director of the program, and we want to take about 50 minutes to talk a little bit about the Bridge Year program and to answer some of the questions that you may have about the program or about the application process ahead of our May 22nd application deadline. I want to give our panelists here an opportunity to introduce themselves. And actually, we're going to be joined by one more person in just a moment. But before I do that, I want to draw everyone's attention to the questions function, which hopefully you can all see in kind of your control panel. That is where, if you have questions, you should jot them down. It's like some people have already discovered this. We will try to get to as many of these questions as we can over the next 50 minutes or so. So on that note, I'm going to turn things over to Ashley. Ashley, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Ashley Scott. I'm a freshman in the great class of 2021. I'm originally from Norfolk, Virginia, so not too far from here in Princeton. But I was in Senegal, in Dakar, Senegal last year on my Bridge Year. And I volunteered at a women's radio station where I helped them with their website and their social media platforms. Interestingly, though, that has nothing to do with what I do on campus in terms of the topics. So I am interested in politics and policy, particularly international policy and diplomacy. And I am on the Princeton mock trial team and the women's lightweight rowing team here at Princeton. So that's me, Stephen.
Hi, so I'm Stephen. I'm also in the great class of 2021. I'm from Pittsburgh, or at least I've spent the last decade there roughly. So I'm studying computer science with a side interest in neuroscience and Chinese language and culture. I'm hoping to work on brain-computer interfaces eventually. So I did Bridge Year in China last year, and I worked for the Concordia Welfare and Education Foundation, which does health and education work in rural Yunnan, which is a province in southwestern China. And I also worked for Green Watershed, which is an environmental organization. And they do a lot of work with the international rivers that go through the province of Yunnan down to Southeastern Asian countries. As what China does on those rivers can have a big impact downstream. Let's see.
Hi, I'm Manny Ramirez. I'm a sophomore here at Princeton, so class of 2020. I'm originally from Easton, Massachusetts. Here I'm in the Woodrow Wilson School. That's my major, which means that I study human rights, public policy, international relations. And I participated in the program 2 years ago in Bolivia. I worked for an arts-based education NGO called Educar es Fiesta. To educate is a party. And I worked as a teacher's aide in public schools, teaching 1st through 4th graders lessons on stuff like creativity, teamwork, children's rights, using games, music, and art.
Nice. Thanks, everyone. Again, we may be joined by one more student, a representative from our program in India, but she's been delayed. So if she does join us, I will give her a chance to introduce herself as well. In the meantime, panelists, there's a question from the attendees about do students do academic work during their time in the Bridge Year program in addition to their service work and language classes? So I can kind of get the ball rolling here, but I'd be curious to hear your thoughts about kind of the, I guess like the intellectual exploration that occurs on this program. Bridge Year is a non-academic program, so there's no formal coursework that happens other than the language class. Service work is the core focus of the program. But there is a lot of learning, I think, as these students can attest, that happens on the program. It's just a little bit different from the kind of learning that most high school students are used to. So I don't know, I'll just turn it over to you guys. Is there anyone who wants to speak to that question?
Sure. So I was in Senegal, which actually has a dual language sort of focus, because French is their colonial language and Wolof is the local language, which we speak with our families at home and often with the people we worked with in our service sites. And so there was, particularly at the beginning, a heavy focus on making sure that we could communicate day to day with the people we were interacting with, mainly our homestay families and the people at our work. But like Scott said, there are so many other sort of intellectual and sort of learning-based parts of Bridge Year. One of the biggest things for me were sort of the independent projects that we did, and then also the group trips that we took. So in terms of independent projects, I did mine on Senegalese writers, particularly female Senegalese writers, and their impact on Francophone literature, which is a particularly intellectual topic, but other people did things like learn how to dance or learn how to play the djembe, which is a local West African drum. But then also on the trips that we took, there was a lot of learning from local people and interacting with people that we met. One particularly memorable moment was when we were in the Dindéfelo region of Senegal, and we went to a Jane Goodall Institute, where we learned about chimpanzees living in Senegal and sort of what you would think of as sort of museum-like. And so that was definitely more intellectual, but at the same time, we were interacting with all different kinds of people, learning new things every day.
Yeah, I can talk a little bit more about some less related but still somewhat intellectual projects. So, and I found like a lot of the learning on Bridge Year was through just like experience and talking with people and doing new things and then kind of thinking about those afterwards. But there's definitely still a part of me that craved like some sort of like rigorous intellectual study. And for me, a lot of that ended up being studying Chinese. And so like I started working on like studying the Chinese, the characters, the words, like making flashcards and studying those, like working with my homestay. And then I also like randomly started looking a lot into finance because a friend and I had like read a book about the Great 2008 meltdown during the first month of our Bridge Year. And so I just like spent a lot of my free time kind of researching that. And that was like an intellectual project that I went that was just totally random, pretty unrelated. I also read a lot on Bridge Year. I think that was a pretty consistent experience for a lot of my group. Was reading a lot of books on a lot of different topics. So since we were in China, there's a very good author whose name I can't actually remember. Peter Hessler is his name. And he wrote some books about China. And a lot of my group read books like that, like about China, to try and get like a better understanding of like the history and like where China is now and where it came from. So I think there's a lot of opportunities to get some more like rigorous intellectual activity as well, in addition to the experiential stuff that you will probably grow to love, as I did at least.
Yeah, Manny, feel free to comment.
Sure, yeah. So also in Bolivia, similar to Senegal, there are two main languages spoken in the region where you live, one being Spanish and the second being the indigenous language there, Quechua. So I think most of the like rigorous academic aspect come from studying those two languages. But in addition, so the company that contracts with the Bridge Year program to like run the program Where There Be Dragons has instructors there on site with you, and they are really knowledgeable about the local scene, and they introduced us to a lot of like academic articles to read to get us more acquainted with the local context. So in Bolivia, that looked like lots of articles on Bolivia's history, current Bolivian politics, sort of indigenous customs, traditions, and worldview, and different social movements that are happening in Bolivia right now. So I certainly think beyond the language aspect of it, there's definitely that more type of classroom-esque learning. But as for the experiential aspect of it, I, for my independent enrichment project, learned to play traditional Andean wind instruments with a local teacher out of their home, which was really fun. And we also learned how to make the instruments out of bamboo and wood. So I think for me, that part of the educational experience of Bridge Year, like working with my hands, was a sort of welcome break from, you know, the classroom learning of high school.
Awesome. So I want to move on just because there are a lot of questions here. Thanks everyone for submitting these questions. And I want to ask you guys to respond to this question. How did you deal with being away from your family for so long, or your friends? Before you do, there's another question that I think I can answer quickly, which is, what is your status as a BYP person? Do you still count as a Princeton student? And the answer is yes, very much. You're a Princeton student. This is a Princeton program. Your status is just, you know, like technically speaking, you're enrolled in a non-degree program. So, so that's the technical side of it. But the gist of it is, yes, you're very much a Princeton student. We invite all of the participants to campus before the program to do an extensive orientation, to get to know a lot of the folks here on campus who support this program. Yeah, and then there's kind of ongoing support during the program from Princeton, from our office in particular, but from other units on campus as well. Looks like Kayla is joining us here.
Hello, I'm trying to figure out the
So Kayla, while you kind of sort out your kind of technical stuff, I'm going to turn things over to the other panelists to respond to this question. How did you deal with being so far away from your family and friends?
Yeah, I can start on that one. So I think one of the best parts of the Bridge Year program in dealing with homesickness and, you know, feeling FOMO, where, you know, all of your friends graduating high school are headed right off to college, but you're headed on this gap year for a year and you won't get for another year. The best part of the program for dealing with that, in my opinion, is the support system you have there with you. So you're sent with 6 other students who are in the exact same situation. You know, they've deferred enrollment for a year and they're going on this 9-month service immersion trip. And for me, they were really helpful. I remember, for example, there was one weekend in October, we had just settled in, living with our homestay families that we lived with for the entire year. And we had one weekend where the group didn't meet for a group activity. And we came back after that weekend and everyone was like, I was so homesick this weekend. Wait, were you homesick this weekend? And it was just that like mutual understanding that we were all sort of dealing with the same processes emotionally, and we could talk to each other, hear others' experiences and how they were coping with it, and we could sort of lean on each other in that way. Also, again, like the Where There Be Dragons, the company that contracts with Bridge Year, the instructors that are there with you, they run semester programs, and they're very experienced with dealing with US students who are going abroad for the first time and have never been away from home for such a long period. So I think they were also like a really great resource for us.
Yeah, and I can talk a little bit about that too. What I found was that it was sort of finding the little things that really helped the most. So like Manny said, there were some weekends where you would be away from the other students who were there with you. And for me, I found that finding ways to do sort of two particular things. One was interact with my homestay family and really build that relationship. So by the end of the year, my American family actually came and visited, and it was the most surreal experience. It was like nothing I've ever experienced before, because it was these two halves of my life coming together, and both are really important to me. And so it was really building that connection with my homestay family. And then the second thing was finding the little things in everyday life that either reminded me of home or made me feel like I was more at home. And for me, that was every day I had to walk through the market to get from my house to my home, or to my service site. And one day for one of my friend's birthdays, she really liked vegetables. So I stopped at a vegetable stall to pick up some vegetables to celebrate her birthday. And from that day on, the woman who sold the vegetables essentially thought of me as another daughter. So anytime I would walk by, she would say hello. And it was just an amazing experience. One time, it showed on my face that I was not having a great day, and she called me over and she just made me feel so much better. And it was those little things that really made it feel like home. In addition, made it feel more like home.
Yeah, I'd like to back up what Ashley said, especially about like your homestay family. I really didn't feel homesick the whole year, which was actually something I struggled with from time to time because I felt kind of guilty. I was like, I probably should feel homesick, but I don't. I think the reason that was because I had a pretty close relationship with my homestay family. I spent a lot of time with them. I ate almost all my meals at home. I spent a lot of time talking to them. I was in a 3-generational household. So I had my homestay brother, my homestay brother's parents, and my homestay brother's parents. Well, one set of them. And I spent like a lot of time talking to them. They were in a lot of ways like the parents of me, because my homestay parents both worked. So like they were home all the time. Like they were the ones I spent like lots and lots of time talking to. But also just like as the year went on, the city we were in, Kunming, just became like, you like walk the same paths, you like go to the same places, and just starts to feel like your city and your home. So I think homestay family is a huge part of just like developing a sense of family and community abroad.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. So there's a related question to this one that I think would make sense to follow, which is, I actually hear this a lot from prospective applicants. Like they worry that because all of their friends or peers are off to college, their first year of college, and Bridger students kind of start their Princeton or their undergraduate education in a different way. You know, you're all of a sudden not on the same trajectory or track. So I guess I'll just throw it to you guys. Was this a concern that you had? And then how do you feel about it, like on the other side?
Yeah. So for me, I was a little bit worried about it. I have never been the best online communicator, so I was worried that if I wasn't seeing my friends every day, or that if I wasn't in the same country, that I wouldn't be as close to them and that I wouldn't talk to them as much. But the opposite happened, and actually another really good thing happened that I'll touch on. And I really found that I talked to my friends almost every day, even if it was just sending a quick Snapchat just to say hi. And then even over the holidays, it was really nice to sort of be able to FaceTime my friends and see them. And so it was difficult at first because I felt like they were moving on and I was sort of being left behind or sort of having to do something else. But in the end, I really found that we all made the right decisions for ourselves. So it was good that I went on Bridge Year and my friendships weren't weakened or destroyed by choosing something different from my friends. And one huge advantage to having friends who are a year older than me is that I can ask them for advice when it comes to being a freshman in college. So when my first finals period rolled around, and whenever I have problems in classes, I can call up my friends and say, hey, how did you deal with this when you were a freshman? And that has just been invaluable this first year.
I can speak a little bit to like how I feel now after having participated in Bridge Year. I think for prospective students, you'd be really surprised how little difference 1 year's time makes. Like coming back, I'm already old for my grades, so I like tower above, like I'm a year and a half older than some of the other people in my class here, but that's like really an insignificant amount of time. You know, like there are people here who are younger than me, who are more mature than me, and like, and vice versa, you know, so I don't think that necessarily that, you know, changing your class year from 2022 to 2023 is really going to have, you know, a concrete difference for your life. And I would definitely echo what Ashley said, that I actually like became closer and developed bonds with my friends from high school that I think might not have happened if I had just gone straight to college here in New Jersey. I had a group of like 6 really good friends from high school, and while I didn't talk to them every day, every month I would just rotate through and have a longer sort of Skype call with them to check in on how freshman year was going for them, what I was doing down in Bolivia, and really I thought that was a nice way to stay connected.
Yeah, I think they've covered it pretty well. But like when you get down to it, both you going on Bridge Year or them starting their first year of college, both of you are having a lot of really new and really cool experiences. And it's even better in this case to like share each one, because the experiences you're having are totally different than experiences they're having. So I didn't really see a problem with like, oh no, like I wish I were in college. I was like, no, like I'm really excited to be here and I'm doing really cool things. And like, I'm glad to exchange like what we're doing, but I'm happy that we've set it this way.
Also, I wanted to say, like, as to 1 year being an insignificant amount of time, I think Princeton will still be here if you delay your enrollment for a year. Like, this place isn't going to disappear, and all of the opportunities and resources available to you as a regular, like, undergraduate student aren't going to magically vanish during the 9 months that you're abroad.
Very, very true.
Kayla, are you there?
I am here. I can't figure it out. I'm so sorry.
That's all right. We don't have your video, but your audio is here. So
Okay.
do you want to just take a moment to introduce yourself to everyone? You can tell us a little bit where you're from, what class you're in, your academic interests here on campus, and then where you did your Bridge Year and what was your service assignment.
Certainly. So my name is Kayla Memes. I'm from South Jersey, a different state than where Princeton is. I am currently a freshman. I'll be in the class of 2021. And my academic interests right now are kind of in between sociology and anthropology. I want to go into public health eventually. So I'm looking at a medical anthropology tract or the Woodrow Wilson School. And over Bridge Year, I went to India when we were in Varanasi, and I worked with an organization called Kiran, which was kind of like a village that worked for kids with special needs. So I was in the school part, but they had job training and different vocational skills, therapy, and all different kinds of holistic care.
Great,
Did
thank
that cover everything?
That you covered it. So I was going to ask this question about, someone asked a question about the peer group, because people were reflecting on, so you're you're kind of departing your peer group and your friends at home, but you're embarking on this Bridge-Year program with 6 other Princeton students. So I don't know, maybe I'll just turn it over to you guys. Like, what was that like to have this group of 6 other students with whom to share this experience?
Yeah. Well, at first, I will admit that it was a little bit tough to sort of be thrown together with a group of other students, but we very quickly formed strong bonds when on our second day in Senegal, our instructors said, okay, you've learned Wolof for about 30 minutes. Now go to the market and talk to people and buy things, which seemed so scary at the time, and we only had each other to rely on. And so already from the beginning, those bonds were really starting to form. And my group had a particularly interesting year. We had a lot of visitors coming in and out. And that was a little bit difficult at first because it sort of, the whole year was kind of in flux. But we could really rely on each other to be there. And actually, unfortunately, one of our friends on the program had to come home early, but we were all so close, and it was really difficult having him leave because we had all grown so close and we all had those great friendships. And now that we're back on campus and he's healthy, and we can all hang out together. My birthday was actually a couple weeks ago, and we all went out to dinner, and it was amazing to just reminisce and realize just how close you can become to someone in 9 months, especially when the only other sort of friendship growing experience that I had was over high school, which is such a longer period, and then before that. And so that those 9 months where you're really together, really relying on each other, really sort of, it's really solidified the friendship and being with each other and supporting each other, and it holds through even till now.
Yeah, I think the group that you go with is one of the most unique and one of the best parts of Bridge-Year, since the experiences you'll have are unlike anything really that you probably have wherever home is for you. So I found it really important to have a group of people that knew exactly like the kind of things that I had done, knew the like experiences we'd been through, and could talk about those, since it can be difficult sometimes to talk to someone who just doesn't have the same background and like know where you were, like what you were doing. It can be kind of hard to relate and really talk about those things in like a really good way. So like having that peer group with you that you know like you can rely on to like kind of process your experiences even after Bridge-Year, just to like reminisce about, oh, like you remember that one time when we went to like that one market, or like this happened. It's just really important to like have people to share things with, and your peer group will also probably be one of your like biggest sources of family as well and support. They're like a constant English speaking part of your experience, and they're just really, really important, really good.
Hey, Kayla, do you want to add to this question?
Yes. I think one of the reasons I was really looking forward to going to India is because religion was something that was really important to me growing up. So I was like very excited about the many religions that are there. And then I ended up learning way more about Judaism than I did about any other religion in India because of the people in my group. And I think you're going there, you're taking a year off of school, but you're going to learn a lot of things from the culture that you're in. But also, as Stephen said, this is, you know, your only core group of English speaking people, so you're going to ultimately learn quite a lot from them as well. And just learning from each other's different backgrounds was such an important part of Bridge-Year for me. And then once you do get so close with this other people, I can attest to that. My 2 best friends on campus are 2 of the boys from my group. We hang out almost every day. We get lunch together almost every day, or something like that. So it really does extend past that 1 year.
Anything to add?
Yeah, sure. So I would just second that the Bridge-Year experience, even though it's only 9 months and you might have known some of your friends from your hometown for like 12 years before, then it's a really accelerated process of getting closer to one another. In addition to like there being your only like coming from similar cultural background, English speakers, they're all, you know, adapting to the same aspects of the program as you. So you get really close really quick. And I would actually, something I've wondered since I got to Princeton is how people who don't participate in the program come to college. I come from a town where like before me, nobody has come to Princeton, so I didn't know if I hadn't done Bridge Year, I wouldn't know anybody going in. And instead, having done Bridge Year, I came to campus with 6 like best friends who I think will be lifelong friends for me. And then also a really cool aspect of the program is you get back on campus, and in addition to the 6 people that were with you, there are 28 others who went to the other 4 countries. And they're kind of built-in friends already for you, because while they didn't go to the same country, they did a very similar program. And I have made some really, really fun friendships with those people as well.
Second
Thank
that.
you. Yeah, I often think that's one of the most undersold aspects of this experience, one of the great benefits that we don't talk nearly enough about. There have been some questions about kind of like the typical day in the life, which I realize probably each of you guys could spend, you know, an hour talking about. So let me kind of give you the challenge of each of you kind of tackling that in a minute. So I'll let you gather your thoughts on that, and I want to just take a moment because there have been some questions about kind of how we manage health and safety on the program. And so I just want to take a moment to kind of respond to those questions. Obviously, like managing health and safety is one of the most important things that we do in the Bridge Year program office. It's something we take very seriously and spend a lot of time thinking about. There are risks involved in participating in a program like Bridge Year, but we work very hard to kind of manage those risks in such a way that we feel really comfortable with those risks. And we hope our students and families feel comfortable with those risks at all. It starts for us with working with a partner with whom we have a lot of confidence. They've got a great track record. I think Manny mentioned them already. They're a company called Where There Be Dragons. They've been operating for 15 plus years. They have great relationships in the communities where we work, very connected with local resources, just a great company in terms of how they think about risk and approach risk. I think someone mentioned this already as well, but at each program site, there are 2 program staff members. Usually one is an expat and one is a host national. So they are a great resource for students. The most typical thing is a student will catch some kind of stomach bug, and then if they have diarrhea for more than a couple of days, then they'll reach out to the on-site staff. The on-site staff will accompany the student to the local clinic, which we'll have vetted, and then more often than not, they're prescribed some medication, and then they go on their merry way. But in addition to all of those resources, we also have all of Princeton's resources that we bring to bear whenever there are any kind of health and safety concerns. So one thing is University Health Services. Here on campus, whenever a student is sick and sees a doctor, we get a report, which we share with University Health Services. And generally speaking, they look at the report and they'll say, yeah, that looks fine. Everything seems reasonable. But every once in a while, they'll have some additional advice that we'll share with the student. Princeton is also a member of something called International SOS, which is this kind of international organization that provides consulting about health, safety, and security, as well as emergency services if we need them. So for example, if we need to identify a specialist in Bolivia, maybe we've never needed to see this kind of doctor before, we're able to give a call to International SOS, and they'll make a recommendation, or they'll go out and vet the most appropriate place to receive the care that we need. And if there were a crisis or emergency, they'll help us organize an evacuation of students. Finally, one last thing we do to kind of manage, or one last thing I'll mention, because there are probably a million other things that we do, is we organize an extensive pre-departure orientation here on campus for all of the participants, during which we, among many other things, we talk about health and safety and kind of how to make, good decisions, and what some of the concerns to look out for are. And then when students arrive at their program location, there's another kind of more in-depth in-country orientation that focuses in on the kinds of health and safety concerns that students need to be thinking about and alert to, and those kinds of things. Yeah, so this is really just the tip of the iceberg, but I did want to address this because it's a question that comes up a lot. It's something we think a lot about, something I think we manage very well. And I'm very happy if people have additional questions or concerns. If they want to call the Bridger office, happy to answer those questions. Email the Bridger program office. Again, I'm really happy to answer those questions. Okay, was that enough time? Does everyone have their kind of speed response? Does anyone want to start?
Yeah, I'll start. So I was in China, and after like the first month, which was like a slightly different schedule, once we got into like the routine that was most of the Bridger program, I'd wake up, I'd have breakfast in my homestay. My homestay grandfather was a really good cook, and he would cook me like a pretty like fancy breakfast, well, for everyone in the homestay. But I would eat that. Then I would hop on my bike, trusty old Blue, and go to language class, which was at a local university. So I'd have my language class, and then I would bike off to my NGO. And so then I'd like get there, like work for a while, talk to my coworkers, and then like lunch would happen. So we'd all like walk out of the office building, walk down the road, and like get lunch somewhere. We'd chat during that time. Like that was a really fun time at the NGO, and just getting to know them. Then we'd head back to work, do more work until like whenever quitting time was. So then some days, one of our local instructor, the in-country instructor, lived pretty close to where my NGO was located. So some days she would come and we would have like an IEA session, which is like the independent projects. And so she was teaching me like a Chinese staff martial art and Tai Chi. So that was pretty fun. And then either after that or directly after work ended, I would head home, and then I would either like chill, either by myself or with my homestay, or read, or just kind of chill until dinner time came around. That's like when people were filtering back from work, my homestay brother, my homestay dad, my homestay mom. And then we'd have dinner. So that was the whole family around the table, just like chilling, like talking about our days and eating. Sometimes a lot. I ate a lot. And then after dinner, sometimes I would have, other days, like I might have an IEA after dinner. So like I did Muay Thai boxing at the end of the year. I like did some dance stuff. And then like other times I do stuff with my homestay family. So we'd either just like chill, or we'd go for like a walk around the neighborhood. We'd talk, or like my yaya really liked to watch, or my homestay grandfather really liked to watch the like the military channel in China. So I would like sometimes watch that with him. It was pretty fun. Sometimes we'd go swimming, or sometimes I'd like write emails to my homestay or not my homestay, my actual family or friends back home, and then usually go to bed. Pretty full day. So
yeah. Okay, so for me, I typically wake up early, like on weekdays, like around 6 a.m. That's actually much more doable if you don't have homework to do, which you don't really have on Bridge Year, so this is fine. But yeah, and then I'd eat breakfast at my homestay. There's lots of fresh fruit for breakfast in Bolivia, so like banana, papaya smoothies, and like passion fruit, and like peaches from the yard. It's really a gorgeous place. And anyways, so the homestays in the Bolivia site are in this town called Tiquipaya, which is like a 30-minute commute from the city of Cochabamba, which is where most of the service sites are. So I would take public transportation, which was really cheap, and you get a stipend, transportation stipend, so it's not like out-of-pocket expense. And I would take public transport into the city. I would be at one of the schools where I'd be working for the day around 8, and I would help out with classes there from around 8 to like noon, 12:30-ish. Some days I would eat with my coworkers at like a restaurant. There's a place in the city. Other times I would head home and eat lunch with my homestay family, my homestay brothers, and homestay mom and dad. And lunch is the biggest meal there. So afterwards, it's customary that people like to take naps for a little bit. And then after that, I would head to the program house, which is where all of the students and instructors would meet. We would typically have language classes there, so Spanish and Quechua classes. We might watch a documentary. Each month of the year had a different theme that we were working through, so we might talk about that. And then afterwards, I would head back home to eat dinner, and the evening was just, chilling, drinking tea, having long talks about different topics with my homestay mom. And then the only difference being on like weekends, instead of going to work, I might go to my independent enrichment activity teacher's house, and we would make Andean wind instruments and learn how to play them. So yeah, that's the typical day.
Cool. So I would not wake up as early as Manny. I generally woke up around 9 or 10 depending on the day. And I would generally have breakfast not with my homestay family, but at a breakfast lady stall. So similarly to the vegetable lady that I mentioned earlier, there are women who sell breakfast every morning. So I would go and have my bean sandwich from my breakfast lady who knew me by name. And then from there, I would take public transportation, which was usually a mix of taxis and what are called njaganjais, which are really brightly colored sort of mini buses. And so they would be filled with people, and it would be very exciting. It was a little bit nerve-wracking the first few times, but after a while, it was sort of fun to talk to the person next to me and see where they were going, that sort of thing. And then I would go to work, and to get from the Njaganjai stop to my work, I would have to walk through the largest fabric market in Dakar, which was always a struggle because the fabric is just so beautiful. So I'd always have to avert my eyes when I was walking by. And I would have work, and then I would walk back and take the Njaganjai and the taxis home, where I would have lunch. So like in Bolivia, lunch was the biggest meal of the day. So I was always either with my family or with another family. So either with my program mates' families, I guess, or with our in-country instructor with his family. And then in the afternoons, we would go to the program house for language classes, which we had most of the year, but after we stopped having language classes or mandatory language classes, a lot of us would do our independent projects. So I would go to downtown Dakar to go to the library. Other students would hang out with their homestay families. I actually watched a lot of French news with my homestay dad, who, though blind, is one of the smartest men I have ever met. And then I would go back home, and we had lunch and dinner really late. So generally I would hang out with my homestay family. There was a lot of communal time, sitting in our courtyard, drinking what's called ataya, which is a sort of green tea that that is sort of what you do when you're with other people. And at the beginning of the year, they kind of let me help cook, but apparently I wasn't very good at it because they stopped letting me help cook. And so then we would have dinner anywhere from about 10 p.m. to midnight, depending on the night, and then straight to bed from there.
Nice. So I guess in India, we were back on the wake up early train. I usually woke up between like 6:30 and 7. We would have breakfast as a group at the program house, which was right on this beautiful river called the Ganga, or Gangaji. So we'd usually get to see the sunrise there, which was just such a nice way to start the day. And then we'd wind our way through the crazy streets. I either rode my bike to my bus stop or walked there. And then I got to take a bus with all the kids to my school, because my school was out in a village. So it was about a 45-minute bus ride. It was just something I really enjoyed, because I could, if I was feeling rather productive, I would catch up on emails that friends from the US had sent, or a couple just things I tried to do on my phone. Sometimes I slept. Sometimes I tried to stay just not getting super sick, but it was still one of my favorite parts of the day regardless. I would spend the morning at my service site. I worked in an office at the school, just kind of helping out the director of the school unit with different tasks, whether it was kind of like, we did a lot of the annual report, and then a quarterly report, and then a bi-yearly report. So that sort of thing. I ate lunch in the cafeteria with all the other teachers. The students ate in their classrooms. So that was kind of a nice bonding time, practiced my Hindi a little bit, and I made a couple friends that I got to sit with every day, which, calmed the nerves of that a little bit. And then I would stay there until about 3, when I would take the bus home again with the kids. And that would drop me off at a different place than where I picked it up. But the bus dropped me off in a city over from where we were, which was still only like a 15-minute walk from my house. But there was a cafe that was also run by Kiran's Village. So sometimes that would kind of be my second, like an extension of my service site, or I called it my other IEA. And I would kind of help with the cafe, make chai when they let me, and make different like masala omelets and things, and just kind of oversee the service part and kind of help out with that. If I didn't stay for that, I went to Bollywood dance, which was my official IEA, and then go right to Hindi class. We all took class together for about 2 hours every day in the beginning of the year, and then it progressively got a little bit less, and we kind of broke off based on where our needs each fell around halfway through the year. And then we usually had to be back pretty early, just to be back before nightfall. We'd all walk home to our respective houses together, which is nice. And then yeah, I would just spend the evenings with my family. I also was allowed to cook in the beginning of the year, until my mom told me that my roti looked like a country map instead of a circle, and then she kind of cooked me out of the kitchen. But later in the year, she went on a vacation, and my uncle and I were in charge of making all the food for my dadaji and dadiji, my grandparents. So it kind of came full circle, or full country map. Whichever way you look at it. But yeah, and then we'd eat around 9 o'clock. So from after Hindi class until then, I'd either play with my brother, my little brother, do some homework, chat with my uncle, and just kind of, we would all wait in my parents' room and kind of sit on their bed and all just chat. And then I usually after dinner would just kind of have a little bit of alone time. To digest and whatnot before the next day. Did some laundry in my room. That was usually the day. Unfortunately, I do have to run to catch a train, but you guys should do Bridge Year. I'm sorry my video didn't work.
Thank you, Kayla.
You're welcome. All right, have a good night.
So we have probably time for one more question. There have been a bunch of questions related to kind of what it's like to bring this experience back to campus. So I think a more kind of general way of phrasing this question that might incorporate various people's questions is, what is maybe the social and academic impact on your undergraduate experience of participating in this program? I know there's some concerns we often hear relate to, like, students who do STEM subjects, and the concern that maybe they won't remember, or they'll develop some rust over the course of the bridge year. But you guys can kind of take it in any direction. Like if you learned about an interest, or just like more broadly speaking, kind of how this experience impacted your academic experience on campus and your social experience, bearing in mind that we have 2 first-year students who are panelists. So that is still being borne out. Before I turn it over to you guys, though, I want to answer some really kind of like some of the low-hanging fruit here. For example, how many applications do we get? Typically, if we look at the last 3 or 4 years, we've been getting between 80 and 95 applications. For the 35 spots. So by all means, if you're interested in the program, I really encourage you to apply. Your chances are pretty good. People also asked about whether having previous language experience was an asset. And, I personally don't think it's an asset or a liability. I think what's most interesting to us is, if you've taken a bunch of language classes in the past, why, and articulating kind of how your interests align with the kind of goals of the program and the opportunities that exist on the program. Obviously, it's like far more interesting to learn that, you've studied Chinese all your life because you had a best friend when you were in elementary school, exposed you to these things. It was really enriching, et cetera, versus like my parents made me take the class, So again, like it's not an asset or a liability. We're more interested in kind of, if you've taken language before, why, and why is that interesting, and how does that line up with your interest in participating in this program? And the same is true of international experience. So every year we send students who have never gone abroad before on this program. And we send students who have a lot of international experience on this program, and everywhere in between. So it's not an asset or a liability necessarily. It's really just, we want to know why you're interested in taking part in this program. And we want to see that your interests in this program line up with the goals that we have for this program and the opportunities that you'll have to explore while you're on this program. I think that was the low-hanging fruit. So I'm not going to reiterate my question. I think you guys know what it is. Who's up first?
I will go first.
All right.
So ever since I was little, I kind of knew what I wanted to do in terms of academics. I've always loved politics and history, and that was just made more firm by my time in Senegal. We were there in an election year for the Gambia, which is a neighboring country. And so learning about world politics while actually being in a place where world politics was happening was really impactful. Additionally, we met the US ambassador to Senegal and Guinea, which was the most amazing experience of my life to date. Oh, scratch that, I met the Queen of England once. Anyway, we met a Princeton alumna from the class of '09, who is a foreign service officer. And that was really, really impactful. I actually grabbed lunch with her one-on-one once, and that sort of was really, really important to how I think about how I can give back, not only to Senegal, but also to Princeton and to the world at large, I guess. So that was one really important thing. Another really important thing, and I think Manny already mentioned this, is sort of the group that you have when you arrive on campus. There is a joke on campus that Bridger students never stop talking about their Bridger experience, which is true for some students, but not as true for others. But still, it's one of those things that you never forget, and that never leaves you. So even though we all kind of push back against the, I don't want to talk about Bridger all the time, there's some moments where things come up and you just have to. And I'm just gonna grab something real fast. This is the bag that I carry around nowadays, which is made from wax fabric that I bought last year, and that my homestay mom actually got made into an outfit for me. So there are little things too that I carry around with me every day. This ring I'm wearing, I bought in the Gambia. And so it's all these little things that sort of add to how you come back, and what your life is like when you come back. I think I was really lucky because well, I wouldn't say lucky, but I had my path when I started Bridger, and Bridger really strengthened that for me and really added to that. But that's not the only experience, and I'll let Stephen and Manny talk about their lives.
Yeah, so I guess I can talk a little bit more about like the academic and also like the personal impact it had on my college experience. So as for academics, sort of like Ashley, I was always interested in, well, mostly it was like geography generally, and then I like found an interest in foreign languages as well. But I think basically Bridger gave me a lot of academic direction. I thought I was going to be a history major going in, but then in Bolivia, in my view, I lived among a community of individuals who were really intentional about how they lived their lives. And part of the reason for that, and only part, but part of the reason for that is that, for example, like climate change is affecting the place in Bolivia where I lived pretty seriously. And so there's no room for error when, water doesn't come out of the faucet every day. And so you have to live your life very intentionally and be intentional about how you use resources and your daily habits. And I derived a lot of inspiration from that for my personal life. And so basically, I came out of Bridger with like a personal mission that I was going to live my life more intentionally and make sure that the way I live my daily life lines up with the values that I had. As for academics, I think like just having that sort of like mission statement leaving was like very key for me. And I was taking classes that I was really interested in rather than ones just because I thought they would be useful to me. And I landed on human rights, and I am very satisfied with my decision. Also, like super briefly, like if you're worried about forgetting like some like math or science, I will just say anecdotally that I went right into an intermediate micro class instead of an intro microeconomics class, and I didn't have too much trouble. So.
Yeah, I can add a little bit more into academics. I am a STEM major. I'm doing computer science and neuroscience, I guess. And when we were at like our PSET sessions for math, everyone was complaining about how they had forgotten all their math, and it had only been like 3 months. So you're going to forget it either way, but you don't actually forget anything. You're just like, oh, I haven't taken a derivative in 3 months. And then you're like, but I know how to take a derivative, so I'm just going to do it. I forgot some trig identities, but I never knew the trig identities to begin with. So like there's that. You can relearn it or learn it for the first time. So like, don't worry about forgetting stuff. Like you learned it once, you're either going to like learn it again or not, and like you're already familiar with the content. So I really wouldn't worry about forgetting things. It comes back really quickly. And I'm kind of like Ashley. I have been interested in computer science for a while now, and I guess Bridger didn't specifically address computer science. I'm now doing Chinese at Princeton, which if I had not done Bridger, I absolutely would not be doing. I just wouldn't even have thought to do it. But it's been like Chinese courses have been some of the most satisfying, most interesting, and most productive courses. Manny is also taking Chinese with me. Catch us at 9 a.m. And it's been fantastic taking those courses and just like having access to another side of campus, another like style of classes outside of STEM. It really balances out my class schedule a lot, not just to have really, really technical courses, but to also have like some just entirely different courses that engage you in a very different way. So yeah, it has a nice amount of balance.
Nice. Well, unfortunately, we are out of time here. So we're going to have to wrap this up. I apologize that we didn't get to everyone's questions. There are like a million questions, which was awesome. But unfortunately, we're constrained by time. I do encourage people to email me or email the Bridgier office with questions. And I know our panelists are happy to field your questions too. So I don't think we put our kind of email addresses next to our names, but I don't think that appears to viewers because I'm viewing it here as well. So in case people don't see it and they want to connect with everyone, I'm going to just share the email addresses here before we wrap up. So the Princeton email is, the Bridgier office email is byp@princeton.edu. Stephen's email is SPOLCYN, right? Stephen, correct me if I'm wrong.
Yep, it's SPOLCYN.
Right, Stephen Polson. Manny's is jmr5@princeton.edu. Ashley's is abscott@princeton.edu. The last thing I'm going to note here, if you'd like to be in touch with Kayla, please email me at byp@princeton.edu, and I'm happy to share things with her. The last thing I'm going to write here is just the deadline to remind everyone to apply by May 22nd, 2018. If you are a transfer student or come off the wait list, your deadline is May 31st. And for good measure, I will put the Bridgier website here as well. You can find out more about the program, lots more, and you probably find a recording of this video tomorrow sometime. Anyway, thanks everyone for participating. Thanks to all the panelists for all your great input, and apply to Bridgier and send us your questions. We really want to make sure everyone has all their questions answered.